21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Pricing isn't about how much you charge, it's about how you charge. And so if we think about a lot of pricing work, we think about price points. And we think about, should it be $9.99? Should it be $99? Should it be $150? Things like this. But more importantly, it's about the connection to value that your customer's getting. And that has nothing to do with the price point. It's an important piece of it. But the most important part is how you package it and how you deliver value to your customer. And so the price points will come, but the most important thing is to get that packaging and that offer right, such that you're really driving home the value that they're going to get and really solving the job they're trying to get done. My name is Bill Wilson, and I'm CEO of Pace Pricing. And I've been in pricing for about 6 years now. I focus mainly on B2B SaaS companies, and I've coached over 400 companies on their pricing. I often hear from founders that they're a little bit scared of their pricing. And this is a really, really common thing. Most founders have some good, healthy dose of anxiety when it comes to actually changing anything to do with their pricing. And that's largely because we're messing with the relationship between your customer and you. And the thing that ties us together is this contract and the money that they exchange for the value that they get. And so anytime we try and poke at that at all, it starts to feel a little unnatural. It feels like we are maybe stirring the beast, so to speak. And so a lot of founders have a real big hang up when it comes to thinking about pricing when it comes to their existing customers. Now, lots of founders will, or B2B SaaS companies will actually raise their prices for new customers, but they'll often leave their existing customers alone and they'll grandfather them into pricing, which leads to a huge problem later on. Eventually, you've got customers that are sitting on pricing that's maybe 5-6 years old, and they're paying a lot less than everybody else. And of course, inflation has happened. So just through that alone, you're losing money. And now you're left with this Herculean task of trying to move every customer from your old pricing to your new pricing. And so those are the two big things I think about. And often the reason that I'm brought in to work with these companies is to help remove that anxiety and build confidence in their pricing. And the best way to build confidence in your pricing is through data. And so through a series of data analysis and looking at your current customers and looking at the segmentation of the market and the jobs they're trying to get done, you can come up with a pricing strategy that makes a lot more sense, will feel a lot more comfortable for you, and a lot easier for you to move your existing customers to. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to move existing customers to new pricing, especially if it's been quite a while. It does take some work. But when it's done, every founder I've ever worked with has always said it was worth it. And now they feel like they can use pricing as a bigger growth lever than they ever have. They now feel like they can make price changes when they need to. They can communicate with their customers. They know that their customers aren't going to churn, and they start to feel more and more confident about pricing in general. And so my mission is to install good pricing practice in B2B SaaS companies. And that's why I do what I do. So the first segue usually is jobs to be done, right? So we really need to understand the job to be done that our customers hiring us to do. And I talk to a lot of founders that will end up in a situation where they're looking at their good, better, best packaging model, for example, and they're just trying to figure out what features should be in the base package, what features should be in the top package, without really thinking about what is it our customers are trying to accomplish. Now, as founders, we're incredibly close to the value that we deliver to our customer, almost too close, because we take it for granted and we understand how it works, but our customers don't necessarily get that right away. So we need to make sure that we're packaging in a way that speaks to the job to be done. And if we do that, it makes packaging a whole lot easier, right? Because you can now really just focus in on, okay, this is the job the customer needs to get done. What are the features and things that back that up, right? And then what we need to figure out next is, once we've solved that main job, what's the next job to be done? So what is the next thing they have to do? And this is how you can start to structure packaging. Now, packaging can take many, many forms. You've got on the very left, I would say, on the all-in-one side, where you have like one offer and that's it. Everybody gets everything. All the way over to the right-hand side, where you've got everything is a la carte. It's like a menu in a very, very big restaurant with lots and lots of options. You can choose anything you want. So think Amazon Web Services, and maybe where do we fit? Like, where do we fit in that range? We have to figure out, are we all in one or are we a la carte? Now, in the middle here is where we get good, better, best. Now, good, better, best gives us enough optionality for customers to be able to make a choice and pick the right plan that's for them, but gives us some control over how it's priced and how it's structured without creating a lot of friction for our customer. That's why it's so popular. But there are two other models that a lot of people don't consider. And I think it's really, really important to call out. So the first one, closer to the all-in-one, is kind of a use case-based pricing. And this is where you have a particular product that solves a job for very different types of people. And so I've heard this compared to like LinkedIn, for example. So LinkedIn has LinkedIn Sales Navigator and it has LinkedIn Recruiter. The chances of someone being a recruiter and a Sales Navigator user are probably pretty low. It could happen, but there's not a lot of crossover, and they can actually sell those two platforms and products completely differently, even though the underlying product is the same. And so that's kind of use case-based pricing. So you've got two very, very different groups of people that need to use your software to get to different outcomes. And they do it in different ways, and there's very, very little overlap. So that's a good case for use case-based pricing. And now, if we go to the right-hand side of good, better, best towards the a la carte side, is we have this idea of platform plus extensions. And you'll see this in a lot of ERP software, where you have like there's one base product where everybody starts, and then you add on the extensions that you need to do it. So think invoicing and inventory and payroll and those types of modules can get added in. And so that sort of bridges the gap between that good, better, best and the a la carte. And so one of the most important things we can figure out as we go through our pricing process is like, how is this going to get packaged? And that really comes down to your customer and the jobs they're trying to solve. The reason Good, Better, Best is so popular is because it does solve a very big chunk of this problem. And most B2B SaaS companies are going to end up in a good, better, best situation. Now, if you're thinking about, which one do I pick, Bill? Like, this is great, but how do I actually pick which model I need? It really does come down to, one, your customer, how sophisticated they are, and the job they're trying to solve. And so if you're selling to large enterprises that have a lot of tools and you're just sort of fitting into their problem space, then a platform plus extensions model might be a pretty good approach, because maybe they have solutions already for some of the things that you offer. And the worst thing that we can do is sort of bundle it all together in a take it or leave it kind of situation, because now we're diluting the value that we're delivering to our customer. And what I mean by that is that how many times have you looked at a package basically and thought, I don't need that, I don't need that, I don't need that. Now all of a sudden you feel like you're paying for stuff you don't need. And we don't want that feeling. So if you're in that situation where you're selling to a lot of enterprise or pretty large mid-market kind of companies, I would definitely consider that approach, especially if you're trying to cover a lot of the surface area of their problem. And then the use case ones are really very, very unique and very, very rare. And so I wouldn't say that those are happen a lot. But if you're in a situation where you do have, say, maybe a very horizontal platform that services people, maybe it's a data platform or something like that, there's probably options for you to be able to verticalize. Now, I wouldn't say verticalize too quickly. I would definitely say make sure you've got a good handle on your first vertical before you add a second. But that's when I would start to consider, okay, what are the use cases here and how are people actually using our product? And that comes from research. And so talk to your customers. Survey your customers, ask them how they get value, dig into all of the features, find out the relative preference they have for those features. Dig into questions about, what do they wish you could do? All of the sort of product development type questions you could do. That's how you get that data. That's how you figure those things out, is you talk to your customers. Your customers hold all the answers. A lot of people want to talk to the market. They want to talk to people that aren't their customers yet. And while that could be good, for example, maybe in a B2C kind of environment, you can probably find a lot of people that would like Netflix that don't have it, for example. However, if you're in a B2B environment and say you have 600 or 4,000 customers, talk to them. They have all the answers. They want you to win, right? They bought your product because they saw the value, and you hope that they're getting that value. And the surefire way to figure that out is to talk to them about it. And once you can figure that out, then you can start to figure out, okay, where do we fit now in sort of this packaging architecture? Now, most B2B SaaS companies do end up in good, better, best because it is that sweet spot between optionality and control. It doesn't make it hugely difficult for customers to decide what they want to buy. But yeah, it's really going to let the data drive you. Second only to packaging, and maybe it's first, it depends when you're talking to people, but a value metric or a pricing metric is the next most important thing to figure out. And so this is really the unit of value that you're charging your customer for. So in a lot of B2B SaaS companies, this is per user. And that's a very, very common approach to B2B SaaS pricing. I think that per user is a bit dangerous. And the reason I think it's dangerous is because we are essentially tying our product to our customer's most expensive resource, which is hiring a new person. And that's very dangerous, especially in the face of downturns in the market and people are starting to lay people off. All of a sudden, you're losing customers because they're cutting headcount. And so figuring out the right value metric, and it could be per user. Like, I'm not saying don't use per user, but I'm saying you need to have an alternate, another metric to help you really win in the B2B SaaS sort of environment. You need a hybrid model, something that you have. We always think that customers will move sort of left to right. They'll start in the good package and then they'll move to the better package and they might move to the best package. Well, a lot of customers are going to be very happy where they are, right? And so how do we extract more revenue from those customers? And so this reminds me, I had a client and they did an appointment booking software for essentially a very similar, like a B to very small B kind of customer. So they're very price sensitive. And everything was all feature differentiated. And they had 3 plans. And essentially what ended up happening was that most people ended up in the first plan, the cheapest plan, because they didn't want some of the more sophisticated features. And even though those features were amazing, and when you talk to the customers, they're all like, yay, I want that thing, adoption was low and people wouldn't pay for it and all those types of things. So it was very, very difficult. The problem was that the product was basically unlimited. You could use that, you could pay the lowest amount, and say you had one practitioner that was booking 200 appointments a month and another practitioner that was booking 20 appointments a month. They're all paying the exact same thing. And so one is clearly getting more value than the other, but we're not capturing that value. And as SaaS founders, our job is to create value in the world and then capture that value, right? That's our job. We create value and then we capture value. And so what we did is we started putting a value metric in place of number of appointments. And through a series of experiments over a few months, we played with entitlements in each of those packages. So now every package, in addition to the features, it also had an entitlement of the number of appointments you could book. And once you hit a certain limit on that appointment, you could either buy more appointments or you can move to the next tier, which had an even more generous entitlement of appointments. And so what happened in the end, after all of this experimentation, we figured out the right number of entitlements based on some experiments over 30-day periods. The one that we thought was going to do the best. We moved all customers to that new pricing. And this customer ended up with about a 25 to 30% increase in ARR and a 52% increase in average revenue per user. And most of their customers now sit in the middle plan, which is exactly where they wanted them. And so the migration plan happens now. People will come in, they'll sit there, they'll hit this limit, they'll move to the next plan because now they're getting the value and they want to do more. But for those people who are doing 20, 30 appointments, I don't know what the current numbers are, but whatever those are, they're happy to stay there, and that's fine. And so that's an example of picking the right value metric, even if you're not going to charge directly for it. using it as a value driver to push people into the right plans is incredibly important. And also, if you can capture revenue for those additional appointments for those really heavy users, then you should. When we think about all the things that we've discussed so far around, it's not how much you charge, it's how you charge, it's the packaging, it's the value metric, it's talking to your customers, but there's a series of steps you have to take to get there. And so what I suggest people do is start with the data you have. Don't try and manufacture data. Don't try and go, oh, we don't have enough data. Use the data you have. So start with your subscription data. Have a look at how people move between plans. Have a look at how much MRR each plan is generating. A lot of companies look at MRR sort of holistically, but look at it through a plan lens and see where it's going. Look at your churn through a plan lens. So that's sort of step one. It's like getting a sense, baseline of where you are with your current data and subscription data. Bonus points if you've got usage data, because now you can really understand how customers are using your platform. If you don't have usage data, I encourage you to, step one is to install something like Amplitude or Mixpanel or one of the many other like Pendo type products into your B2B SaaS platform so you can start measuring usage. And so that's sort of your basis. Then the next thing I would do is I would talk to your customers. I would interview them. I would survey them. I would conduct jobs to be done style interviews to actually get behind their pains and really understand the job that they're trying to get done. And so from there, you can go through this process where you map out, okay, now we understand the jobs to be done. What are all the different things I can measure along the way that a customer is going to, all the steps they take, what can I actually measure inside there? And that sort of gets you to this idea of like figuring out your pricing metric. And so it's like, oh, at the very, very beginning, it's the easy one. Why per user is so popular is because what's the very first thing you have to do when you install a piece of software? Add users, right? So let's start there. But it's really far to the left of the value you generate. So try and enumerate all the things. Don't edit. It's like writing a first draft. Never edit, just write down all the possible things you could measure. Doesn't matter if you think they could be viable or not. And then you can evaluate based on a few criteria for figuring out which ones make the most sense for your customer and for you. And there are some approaches to do that. And then once you've figured that out though, the next thing we have to do is figure out those prices we talked about. Before I said it's not about how you charge, it's about, it's not about how much you charge, it's about how you charge. Well, now we need to figure out the how you charge. And so the easiest way to do that is to have a look at the competitive landscape. Now, I'm not saying copy your competitors, far from it. Not once have I mentioned competitors so far. I think you really need to understand the envelope of what is the top of your market and what is the bottom of your market. And the best way to do this is to pick where you want to live. Are you the premium offering? Or are you the budget offering? Because if you can own one of those two positions, you'll win, right? Because that's how you position. Now, playing in the middle is very messy, but can be done. But you should be striving for one of those two things. And you need to set price points based on a couple different ways. You can do hill climbing, where you're actually testing pricing in market with your sales team, and you keep increasing every time you win a deal until you get lots of pushback. That's one way to set prices. Another way is like an economic value to the customer, where you're actually, how much value are we actually adding? And we're measuring it. And then we take some percentage of that value as what we would charge. Or you're doing a pricing sensitivity study with all of your customers. Just ask your customers what they're willing to pay. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. There's some really good approaches to it, like Van Westendorp and Gabbard Granger. Pick one, do it, get your pricing sensitivity, and then you've got a pretty good shot at getting the right prices. But that's all the fun stuff and all the hard stuff. That should give you a bunch of confidence. But oftentimes I've found at this stage, it still doesn't give people the confidence they need to roll it out. So the final step in all of this is that you need to talk to your customers again. And you need to share with them where you're going, what your new pricing plans look like, and validate it with them that they can accept it. Now, at the same time you're doing that, you need to be talking to new customers that are coming in the door and seeing if they're going to accept it. The ultimate validation is to sell it. And so once those things start happening, that's when the confidence starts to build. And then you can start to look at your existing customers and come up with a rollout plan and a communication plan to really talk to them about, this is why the price is changing, this is our new packaging, this is where we think you belong, here's where it's going to happen, all of those types of things. And you have those conversations. Now, there's still going to be a bit of anxiety here. And I recommend people take 10% of each of the cohorts they're going to move and try their approach to moving them and see how that goes. And if that goes well, then you can start to roll it out to everybody. And so that's kind of like from beginning to end how you could run an entire pricing project. So if you want to find out more about how I do this, I post a lot on LinkedIn, mostly pricing page teardowns, which are a lot of fun. So you can find me at Bill Wilson, Pace Pricing on LinkedIn. I'm pretty much WDR Wilson on every platform. So if you're on Twitter or LinkedIn, that's where you can find me. And of course, you can visit us at pacepricing.com. And from there, you can have a look at the things we offer, but also get lots and lots of resources. My core value of mine is to give everything away. So if there's anything that you need from me, just please ask.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.